Welcome to Sexy in Your 60s. I'm Dvora Citron. We're in season 2 now, and this season we're going deep on making friends in midlife, the real work of it, the joy of it, and why it matters more than most of us realize. I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with it before you move on. When is the last time you made a new friend? Not someone you added on Facebook or Instagram, not a friendly acquaintance you see at the gym, a real friend, someone you called when something happened, someone who knows what your life actually looks like right now. Take a moment, really think about it. For a lot of women, that answer is uncomfortable because the honest answer is, it has been a while, maybe a long while, and they're not sure why, and they're not sure what to do about it. And they feel a little embarrassed that it's even a question. I'm here to tell you that the embarrassment is misplaced. What you're experiencing is not a character flaw. It's a structural reality. And once you understand that structure, you can start working with it instead of against yourself. Last week, I told you about Morocco and what happened when I came home a few weeks later with real friendships from a trip I had taken with strangers. Today, I want to zoom out from that personal story and look at what is actually going on for women in midlife when it comes to connection. The research, the reality, what other women are living, and what I think is worth trying. But I also want to challenge you a little. You know I like doing that. Because I think the most interesting thing about this topic is not the problem. It's the question of what you're willing to do about it. What are you willing to feel? How curious are you willing to get about the stranger sitting next to you? That's where the episode is going. Let's go. Here's something I want to push back on. The idea that friendships when we were younger built slowly, that it took time, that you had to earn your way into closeness. I don't think that's true. I think our friendships actually built quickly, sometimes very quickly, because we were insidious, relentless. Proximity was there with the same people, daily, sometimes even hourly. School, teams, a first apartment, the years when your kids were small and you were all in the same waiting rooms, sidelines, carpool lanes. A workplace for me, that was the hospital and then the high school. Parents' clubs, faith communities. You didn't have to decide to build those friendships. You just kept showing up and the closeness accumulated almost without your noticing. The container did the work. You showed up inside it. And then the containers changed or disappeared entirely. Kids grew up, careers shifted, people moved, retirements happened, and the invisible architecture that had been quietly generating connection for decades, that daily, almost involuntary proximity, simply stopped without warning, without a replacement. Most of us didn't realize how much we had been relying on it until it was gone. And underneath all that structural loss, there were the personal ones. Divorce, grief, major reinventions. Not all friendships survive the version of you that comes out the other side of a significant change. Sometimes you grow towards something and your friendships don't grow with you. The loneliness of outgrowing people you love or realizing the fit is no longer right, that's real. And almost nobody talks about it. Here's what the science tells us, and I want to name the sources because they matter. A researcher named Dr. Julianne Holt-Lunstad has studied social connection and health across millions of people worldwide. Her finding? Lacking social connection carries health risks comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. The U.S. Surgeon General cited her work when he declared loneliness a public health crisis. Separately, the Midlife and United States study, a decades-long project tracking thousands of Americans through midlife, describes this stage of life as a genuine crossroads. The choices you make now, including who you surround yourself with, have profound effects on everything that comes after. And last fall, Psychology Today ran a piece called The Midlife Friendship Gap: Why So Many Women in Their 40s and 50s Feel Lonelier Than They Expected at This Stage. Mainstream, documented, not just your experience. What all of this points to is the same thing. Social connection is not a luxury. It's a health strategy. The quality of your relationships may be one of the most powerful variables in how you age. A few weeks ago, right around the time I got back from Morocco, I put a question to the community of women I am part of online. I asked, what challenges have you had making friends in midlife, and what has actually worked for you? And the responses were remarkably honest. One woman wrote 4 words: have made no friends. Another: life is lonely. No elaboration. And I think it landed for so many women reading it because it names something that usually only gets thought, never said out loud. Another woman had moved to a new city with her husband, and their marriage ended after the move. She's just 53. She wrote that she's not even sure she remembers how to make friends anymore. The skill feels lost, like a muscle that has atrophied. She's starting over in every sense. Several women talked about the difference between acquaintances and real friends. You can accumulate acquaintances easily. Real friendship, the kind where someone actually knows you, takes something more. And the gap between those two things is where a lot of midlife loneliness quietly lives. One observation that stayed with me: a lot of women we would most want to befriend are already fully committed to existing friendships. They simply don't have room for someone new. And recognizing that shifts the experience of not connecting from something personal to something circumstantial. It's not a rejection, it's a full calendar. Those are very different things. I'll be honest, this one landed for me quite personally. I've not always been the person who gets invited into the tight circle. And I know I'm not alone in that. A few women talked about geographic and cultural isolation, living somewhere they do not quite fit, where finding women who share their values and energy feels genuinely hard. That's real, and it doesn't get acknowledged enough. And one woman, widowed, and by her own description, something of a loner. She made herself join a women's organization that has been meeting since 1923. She went alone to as many events as she could manage. She doesn't have a best friend there yet, but knowing the other women there are navigating the same things makes it feel like a gift. Her advice: go, join something. Keep going back until it feels like yours. The responses that moved me most were not the ones describing the problem. They were the ones describing the way through. What struck me is how consistently they mapped onto what the research predicts. The women who were thriving socially were not doing anything complicated. They were creating the conditions: proximity, repeated contact, shared purpose that midlife otherwise removes. Over and over, find something you genuinely love doing. Do it with other people and keep showing up. Fitness classes, walk dates, book clubs, volunteer work, creative communities, sports leagues, civic groups. Not just as hobbies, as containers. Structures that put you in proximity with the same people repeatedly over time. The invisible architecture rebuilt on purpose. One woman joined a rock choir during one of the hardest seasons of her life. She made what she describes as the best friends she's ever had. Not because the choir was magical, because she kept showing up week after week, same room, same people, working toward the same thing. And when she clicked with someone, she made the simple ask, "Hey, want to grab coffee sometime?" Simple, low stakes, direct. That's the whole move. 3 words from another woman have stayed with me. Repeat, consistent contact. Everything else is a variation on that theme. And one woman offered something that genuinely shifted how I think about this. She said, midlife friendships are different from the ones she had when she was younger. Not worse, just different. And when she released the expectation that a new friendship should feel like a 30-year friendship, every encounter became lighter, less loaded, more possible. You know, I have found that to be true even now with friendships that I had when I was younger, even as a young child and a child growing up, that I've rekindled. They're different, more meaningful in a way. So adjust the expectation, not lower it, adjust it. New friendships at this stage are not going to feel the way old ones did. They're going to feel different, and different with enough time and enough showing up, it can become something that you never expected. Here's where I want to push a little, because I think for a lot of women, the real barrier to making friends is not logistics. It's not schedule or geography or even the lack of a good container. It's the discomfort of not knowing how it will go. Reaching out to someone new is vulnerable. Suggesting coffee to an acquaintance is a small risk. What if she's not interested? What if the conversation is awkward? What if you have nothing in common? And I want to ask you, what if you got curious about that discomfort instead of avoiding it? What if you treated it not as a stop sign, but as a signal that something real might be on the other side? The women who described the richest social lives in my community were not the ones who found it easy. They were the ones who walked into uncomfortable rooms and stayed, who joined things knowing nobody, who made the ask knowing it might not land. What if the point is not to feel ready? What if the point is to go anyway and stay open to what unfolds? I mentioned friendship speed dating last week. The idea of giving someone your genuine attention before you feel close enough to justify it. And today I want to build upon that. I've just been invited to join a local professional women's referral group, a networking group. And built into how that group functions is an expectation that members meet one-on-one with each other. Not optional, part of the structure. I honestly do not know what to expect from those conversations. I don't know what overlap we will find, whether the connections will feel natural, whether anything will grow from them. I'm genuinely curious and genuinely open. And I think that is exactly the right posture. Not performing enthusiasm, not managing expectations down. Just let's see what's there. Because that's the thing about intentional, structured connection. It takes a different kind of presence than the organic friendships of our 20s. It asks you to show up without a script, without a guaranteed outcome, and be genuinely open to being surprised. That openness, that willingness to not know, that's the whole game. I'm not going to give you a checklist this week. I want to give you something different, an invitation. Find one place in your life where you have been staying comfortable instead of getting curious. One potential connection you have been circling but not making. One container you've been thinking about joining but have not. And instead of asking yourself whether you feel ready, ask yourself this. What might I discover if I went anyway? Step into a little discomfort. Get genuinely curious. stay open. See what unfolds. Because here's what I believe, and what the research supports, and what the women in my community keep showing me. The friendships that change your life at this stage are on the other side of a small, uncomfortable yes. Not a big leap, just a small yes. A coffee, a class, a group you join without knowing anyone. One woman in my online community said something I keep coming back to. Focus on interests, not age. The women who described the fullest social lives were not the ones who went looking for friends. They went looking for things that mattered to them, and they found people along the way. The old containers are gone. The invisible architecture that generated connection without our even trying, that's gone too. But the capacity for real, deep, surprising human connection is absolutely still available. And at this stage of life, when you know yourself well enough to choose wisely and to go deep quickly, it can become some of the most meaningful connection you've ever experienced. You just have to be willing to be a little uncomfortable first. I'm Dvora Citron. This is Sexy in Your 60s. If today's conversation resonated with you, please consider following the podcast, leaving a review, or sharing it with someone who might need it right now. That's how these conversations continue to grow. I would love to stay connected. Come find me at slantplants.com/contact. And if you're curious about the Sexy in Your 60s coaching experience, get on the wait list at sexyinyour60s.com. Until next time, take care of yourself, stay curious, and stay boldly, beautifully sexy exactly as you are.